The auction house buzzed with anticipation. A sea of well-dressed buyers filled the space, their eyes scanning the magnificent horses being paraded one by one. Among them stood a man who had spent years perfecting his instincts, a self-made millionaire known for his ability to spot the next great champion. He had built his fortune on bold investments and an unwavering belief in his own judgment. Today was no different. He had his eyes on a select few, confident that his choices would only solidify his reputation. But as fate would have it, a single decision that day would become the one he could never take back. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the hall, calling out bids as the next horse was led into the ring. A young stallion, lean but strong, with a quiet intensity in his deep brown eyes. His coat gleamed under the lights, his muscles rippling with every movement. A few murmurs spread through the crowd. Some saw potential, others saw inexperience. The millionaire, however, barely gave the horse a second glance. He had done his research. This one, he decided, wasn't worth the investment. Too green, too untested. He had learned to trust the numbers, and the numbers weren't in this colt's favor. As the bidding began, a few hopeful buyers threw their numbers in, but the energy in the room was nothing like it had been for the more established bloodlines. The millionaire watched with disinterest, his mind already moving to the next lot. But somewhere in the crowd, a different kind of buyer saw something others didn't. Someone who understood that greatness isn't always obvious at first glance. With a final call from the auctioneer's hammer, the horse was sold for a fraction of what some of the others had gone for that day. The millionaire barely noticed. The months that followed were filled with the usual triumphs and challenges of his business. He acquired new horses, placed them in top-tier training programs, and watched as his investments either soared or crumbled. But something unusual began happening. Whispers spread through the racing world about a young stallion that was defying expectations, winning small races with an ease that suggested he was just getting started. At first, the millionaire ignored it. There were always underdogs that had their fleeting moments of success before reality set in. But then, the wins kept coming. Larger races, stronger competition, and with each victory, the horse's name became harder to ignore. One night, as he sat in his office reviewing reports from his trainers, he saw a headline that made his breath catch. The very horse he had dismissed that day at the auction had just shattered a track record. Footage of the race played on his screen, and he found himself leaning forward, watching the colt stride with a sense of disbelief. It was the same horse, except now, he was a force of nature. Power, grace, determination, and worst of all, potential. The kind of potential he had failed to see. Regret crept in like a shadow. He had turned down opportunities before, made mistakes along the way. But this one felt different. This wasn't just any horse. This was shaping up to be the kind of legend that people talked about for years. The kind that changed everything. And he had let it slip through his fingers without a second thought. As the racing season progressed, the horse continued to dominate, drawing crowds, earning headlines, and catching the attention of the biggest names in the sport. Investors lined up, eager to be part of what was becoming an unstoppable force. But for the millionaire, there was nothing he could do now. No buyback, no second chance. He had made his choice, and now, all he could do was watch as someone else reaped the rewards of the opportunity he had once held in the palm of his hand. The final blow came when the horse entered the most prestigious race of the year. The stakes were higher than ever, and the world was watching. As the starting gates flung open and the thunder of hooves filled the air, the millionaire sat motionless, his hands clenched as he watched history unfold. And in that moment, he realized the true cost of what he had lost. The night before the big race, the millionaire couldn't sleep. He tossed and turned in his bed, his mind racing through every detail of the past months. In the quiet of his luxury apartment, he replayed that fateful day at the auction over and over, each time wondering if there had been a sign he missed. It was as if the universe had set this moment up to haunt him. Every decision he'd made, every missed opportunity, now stood in stark contrast to the horse's meteoric rise. He had always prided himself on making calculated decisions backed by cold, hard data. His success had been built on this formula: research, analysis, and the confidence to act when others hesitated. Yet the young colt he had rejected was a reminder that some things couldn't be measured in numbers. It was a lesson he had learned too late, one he was paying for now in ways he couldn't have imagined. The track was calling, and so was his regret. But there was another side to this story, one that few knew about. The colt's new owner, a reclusive figure who had managed to stay under the radar, was no stranger to second chances. He had been in the racing game for decades, though his name had never been as famous as some of the sport's biggest players. He was known for taking in horses others had given up on, those that didn't quite fit the mold, those that needed a little extra care, a little more patience. This man had spotted the colt at the auction, not just for his raw physical potential, but for something deeper, something that was impossible to quantify. There was a fire in the horse's eyes that spoke to him in a way no statistics ever could. It was a rare instinct, something that only comes after years of seeing champions fall and rise. And he was determined not to let this one slip away. He paid a fraction of what others might have, but he knew from the moment he saw the horse that the price wasn't about what he was worth today, but what he would be worth tomorrow. As the colt began to perform at track meets, the new owner stayed in the shadows, quietly building his reputation. His methods were unconventional: no big flashy stables, no high-profile trainers. He believed in keeping things simple, focusing on what mattered: the horse's well-being, its mental state, and the right guidance to unlock its true potential. This approach was paying off in ways that even the most skeptical critics couldn't deny. What the world saw on race day wasn't just a horse. It was a testament to patience, hard work, and a willingness to look beyond what was obvious. Meanwhile, the Millionaire's world continued to spin on its axis, seemingly unaffected by his personal turmoil. He was still making headlines, still the go-to person for big business deals and investments. His wealth seemed endless, and his influence stretched across industries. But the colt's rise had begun to chip away at the foundation he had so carefully built. People were starting to ask questions. How could someone so successful have missed something so significant? His closest associates whispered behind his back, wondering if this would be the moment that finally broke him. The millionaire had tried to brush it off at first. He threw himself into work, focusing on expanding his empire, convincing himself that there was nothing to be gained from dwelling on the past. But each time he saw the colt's name in the headlines, each time he heard about another victory, his resentment grew. It was as though the universe had given him a gift, a perfect opportunity that he had let slip away. And with each passing race, the pain of that lost potential gnawed at him more and more. What no one knew, however, was that the millionaire had tried to buy back the colt. After the horse won his first major race, the millionaire had made several inquiries, attempting to purchase him at any price. But the reclusive owner wasn't interested. He had no desire to sell, not when he saw the colt's future unfolding in front of him. And so the millionaire's frustration mounted, his desperation evident in the way he worked the phones late at night, trying to find someone, anyone, who could help him get the horse back. In the midst of all this, another mysterious figure entered the picture, a renowned trainer whose methods were known for being ruthless. He had built his career on transforming horses with a history of failure into champions. Rumors swirled that this trainer had been offered a substantial sum to work with the colt. But his involvement came with a strange condition. He wouldn't take on the horse unless the reclusive owner agreed to sell him within a year. This offer presented a difficult decision. The trainer's reputation was formidable, and if anyone could push the colt to the next level, it was him. But there was something unsettling about the conditions surrounding the deal. The reclusive owner was no fool. He knew that involving this trainer would change everything. The colt would become a different horse, a prize to be sold to the highest bidder. And he wasn't sure he was ready to let go of the animal he had nurtured from the very beginning. As the day of the big race approached, tension built on all sides. The millionaire was planning to attend in person, a final attempt to see for himself if the colt could really be the legend everyone said he would be. The reclusive owner, meanwhile, was making his own preparations, aware that this was the moment that could change the trajectory of his life and the horse's forever. But neither man knew the full truth about the trainer's true intentions, or the decision that awaited them all at the finish line. And as the sound of the horse's hooves reverberated through the stadium, one thought echoed in the millionaire's mind. What if he had made the wrong choice? What if the horse was always meant to be more than just a race winner? What if he was meant to change everything? But there were no answers yet, and the race was about to begin. The moment the horses were loaded into the starting gate, an electric silence swept over the crowd. The millionaire, standing among the sea of spectators, could barely contain his anxiety. His gaze never left the track, eyes scanning the lineup for the colt. The air felt charged, heavy with expectation. This race wasn't just about a victory, it was about redemption. But there was something else lingering beneath the surface, something neither he nor anyone else fully understood yet. The reclusive owner stood on the far side of the track, his posture as calm and stoic as ever, yet his heart raced in ways he wouldn't dare show. He'd known this day would come, the day when everything he had worked for would be tested. The colt was more than just a horse to him. He was a symbol of hope, of second chances. But as the gates swung open and the horses surged forward in a blur of motion, the stakes suddenly felt much higher than anyone anticipated. The colt burst forward with surprising speed, his every movement smooth and effortless, as though the track itself belonged to him. The crowd roared as he pulled ahead, leaving his competitors struggling to keep up. The millionaire, despite himself, felt a surge of pride. This was the horse he had rejected, the one he had underestimated. But now he was in the lead. The colt was proving everyone wrong, proving the world that he was destined for greatness. But just as the race reached its final stretch, something unexpected happened. The trainer who had been rumored to be behind the colt's transformation appeared on the track, standing at the edge with a stopwatch in hand. His presence was strange. He wasn't part of the official team. Yet there he was, a silent figure in the background, watching intently. The millionaire's stomach turned as he realized something was off. The trainer had always operated in secrecy, but his sudden appearance raised more questions than answers. In the final seconds of the race, the colt faltered just for a moment. A slight misstep, barely noticeable to the untrained eye. The reclusive owner's heart skipped a beat. He knew his horse well, and he knew something had changed. A jolt of panic rippled through him as the colt's stride began to slow. Was it fatigue? A momentary lapse in concentration? Or had something more sinister been at play? The trainer's eyes never left the colt, and neither did the millionaire's. He wasn't sure if he was seeing things, but there was something strange about the way the trainer's lips twitched into a subtle smile. It didn't make sense. And then, in a twist that sent shockwaves through the crowd, the colt stumbled again this time, more noticeably. The leading horse surged forward, narrowly taking the victory. The colt, despite his early dominance, came in second, a mere few lengths behind. The millionaire's chest tightened as the reality of what had just happened began to settle in. How could this be? The colt had been untouchable, he was meant to win. But now, the reclusive owner stood frozen, his mind racing. And for the first time, doubt clouded his judgment. As the dust settled and the horses were led back to the paddock, whispers began to spread like wildfire. Some speculated that the colt's misstep had been the result of a sudden injury. Others wondered if fatigue had finally caught up with him. But one theory quickly gained traction, that the colt had been tampered with. The presence of the mysterious trainer, coupled with the colt's unexpected stumble, sparked a firestorm of suspicion. Was someone behind the scenes sabotaging the horse? or was there a more calculated plan at work? The millionaire, watching from a distance, felt a strange mix of relief and unease. His decision to reject the horse may have spared him from a massive loss, if there was any truth to the whispers. But the reclusive owner wasn't so sure. The trainer's involvement had raised too many red flags. If the colt had been manipulated in some way, it would explain his sudden drop in performance. But who could have been behind it? And why? It was a question that loomed over him like a shadow, one that he couldn't ignore, no matter how badly he wanted to. In the aftermath of the race, the colt's future hung in the balance. His second-place finish was nothing to scoff at, but it was far from the triumph everyone had expected. The millionaire made his move. He reached out to the reclusive owner, offering an enormous sum to buy the colt back, now that the horse had been somewhat discredited. It was a tempting offer, especially given the public's growing doubt about the colt's potential. But the reclusive owner wasn't so easily swayed. He knew the truth. Something wasn't right, and he wouldn't let anyone take advantage of the situation. As the days passed, the pressure mounted. The colt's next race was only weeks away, and the stakes were higher than ever. Was he truly the champion everyone had believed him to be? Or had he been overhyped? Was the millionaire right that his rejection was the right choice all along? Or was there more to this story than anyone realized? The trainer's cryptic behavior only deepened the mystery. He continued to appear at the track, watching from the sidelines, never offering any explanation for his strange involvement. His motives were unclear, and his connection to the colt was now suspect. Why had he shown up? What was his interest in the horse? And why was he so intent on pushing him to the top? The tension between the millionaire and the reclusive owner reached a boiling point. A rivalry was forming, not just over the colt's future, but over what this horse symbolized: pride, ambition, and the battle for control. The race for the colt's future had just begun, and the next move could change everything. As the day of the next race drew nearer, one thing became certain. This story was far from over, and the twists were only beginning. The day of the next race arrived with a heavy air of anticipation. The crowd at the stadium buzzed with excitement, but beneath the surface, the stakes had grown far more personal. The colt, now under more scrutiny than ever, was the center of attention, and both the millionaire and the reclusive owner stood at opposite ends of the paddock, each waiting for the moment that would determine everything. The millionaire had increased his offer, hoping to buy the colt back, but the reclusive owner was firm in his decision to keep the horse. The trainer, still a mysterious figure lurking in the shadows, had disappeared in the days leading up to the race, adding another layer of uncertainty. Something about his absence felt off, like a puzzle piece that was deliberately removed from the picture. It gnawed at the millionaire, but there was nothing he could do about it now. This race would tell the world everything. As the horses lined up at the starting gate, the tension was palpable. The colt, for the first time, seemed nervous. His normally confident gait had slowed, and there was an unmistakable hesitation in his movements. The reclusive owner, standing just outside the stables, watched with a mixture of hope and fear. He had put everything into training the colt for this moment. But now, with the weight of the entire racing world on his shoulders, it was unclear if the horse could handle the pressure. The gates flew open, and once again, the colt surged forward with surprising power, as if shaking off the doubt that had lingered before. But this time, something was different. As the race reached its halfway point, the colt stumbled just as he had in the previous race. But this time, the stumble was far more pronounced. The millionaire, watching from the stands, could feel a sense of déjà vu creeping in, the same sense of unease that had plagued him in the days following the colt's first misstep. Something was wrong. The colt's trainer suddenly appeared again, stepping out from behind the grandstand in a move that felt far too deliberate. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes locked onto the colt with an intensity that could not be ignored. The crowd seemed to sense the shift, a murmur spreading through the stadium as all eyes turned to the horse, who was now falling behind. The reclusive owner, helpless, stood frozen at the edge of the track, willing the colt to find his rhythm, to fight back. But then, in a twist no one could have predicted, the trainer sprinted toward the colt, leaping onto the track in a move that stunned everyone. In a moment that seemed to freeze time, he grabbed the colt by the reins, pulling him off course and away from the race. The crowd erupted into confusion, and chaos quickly spread as security rushed to contain the situation. The millionaire, now standing on his feet, watched in disbelief. The colt had been taken out of the race, and the trainer's actions left a trail of questions that no one had the answers to. As the dust settled and the race continued without the colt, it became clear that everything had been a setup, a calculated play. The trainer's mysterious involvement was not random. He had been manipulating the colt all along, trying to force a situation where the colt's value would be questioned, where the reclusive owner's commitment would falter. But what no one had realized was that the trainer's motives weren't driven by money or fame. It was personal. Months earlier, the trainer had lost everything in a betting scandal, his career destroyed when a certain high-profile owner had blackballed him from the racing world. That owner, as it turned out, was none other than the millionaire. The trainer, driven by a need for revenge, had seen in the colt an opportunity to get back at the millionaire, to expose his weakness. By causing a disruption in the colt's progress, he could destroy the reputation of the man who had ruined him. But in a final twist of fate, the colt's owner made the ultimate decision. With the trainer's betrayal exposed and the millionaire's desperation to reclaim the horse now clear, the reclusive owner decided to let the colt race one final time, not for the fame or fortune, but for the love of the sport. The colt, unburdened by the weight of others' ambitions, ran with an intensity that nobody could match. As the final stretch approached, he pulled ahead in a breathtaking display of raw power, crossing the finish line in first place. The crowd erupted into applause. But it wasn't just for the horse, it was for the culmination of everything that had led up to this moment. The reclusive owner, standing in the winner's circle, didn't smile. He didn't need to. He had already won in ways that mattered far more than a trophy. He had proven that true greatness couldn't be manipulated, couldn't be bought. It had to come from within, from a place of heart, and it was the colt who had shown that above all else. For the millionaire, it was a bitter moment. He had learned the hard way that no amount of money or power could buy back a lost opportunity. The colt was a symbol of everything he had missed, a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories come from the most unexpected sources. And in that final race, as the colt took his victory lap, the millionaire realized something profound. Some things, no matter how much you try to control them, were always meant to be. As the dust settled and the cheers continued, the colt's true value had finally been revealed, not just as a champion on the track, but as a symbol of redemption, resilience, and the unpredictable forces of fate. The millionaire walked away, his heart heavy with regret, but also a strange sense of understanding. The colt had taught him a lesson he would never forget. And for the reclusive owner, it was the ultimate victory, a moment of vindication that would resonate for years to come.